In 1968, Mary Bell, just 10 years old, embarked on a spree of violence that would send shockwaves through her Newcastle, England community and beyond. Mary committed a pair of seemingly random and shockingly gruesome murders. This is a true crime story of children killing children. Mary Bell's early years were far from idyllic. Her mother Betty was a young prostitute. The identity of her father is unclear. Betty's tumultuous life was a constant source of instability for Mary. Her mother Betty tried numerous times to rid herself of Mary. Betty would drop Mary off at relatives for extended periods of time. On at least one occasion, Betty took Mary to an adoption center, stating that she needed to get rid of Mary. Raised in a chaotic and abusive environment, young Mary Bell had to fend for herself far too often. One of the more disturbing abuses resulted from Mary's frequent drug overdoses, which were likely administered by her mother. More than once, Mary was taken to the hospital and treated for overdose, her stomach pumped. A young playmate, as well as little Mary herself, said Betty Bell gave Mary the Smarties candy that made her sick. According to experts, overdoses, particularly in a developing child, can cause serious brain damage, a common trait among violent offenders. Perhaps the greatest tragedy, if true, are Betty's abuse of her daughter, Mary, while working the streets as a prostitute. Witnesses recount the horrors that Mary had to endure as her mother's sexual prop. This would certainly help to explain Mary's erratic behavior. If she had been violated herself, the need to violate others might incite her to the abuse of her own young victims. From a tender age, Mary, perhaps understandably, displayed alarming signs of emotional instability. Her early life, marked by neglect and abuse, set the stage for a dark and troubling future. The neighborhood kids often bore witness to Mary's erratic behavior, but nobody could predict the horrors that lay ahead. The first victim of the young Mary Bell was 4-year-old Martin Brown. On May 25, 1968, the day before Mary's 11th birthday, Martin's lifeless body was discovered in an abandoned house in Scotswood, Newcastle. A local workman named John Hall soon arrived on the scene. He attempted to perform CPR to no avail. At first, authorities believed it was a tragic accident, perhaps the result of a fall. As Hall attempted CPR, 2 local girls, 10-year-old Mary Bell and her 13-year-old friend and neighbor Norma Bell, no relation, appeared at the doorway to the bedroom. Both were quickly shooed away out of the house. The 2 knocked on the door of Martin's aunt, Rita Finley, and informed her that one of her sister's children had just had an accident. "We think it's Martin," they said, "but we can't tell because there's blood all over him." Less than 2 months later, on July 31st, 1968, another child met a gruesome end at the hands of Mary. This time, Mary Bell recruited an accomplice, that same friend, 13-year-old Norma Bell. The victim was a 3-year-old named Brian Howe. Brian's lifeless body was found in the same neighborhood. The evidence indicated a shocking display of cruelty. The young killers had mutilated Brian's body, leaving a trail of evidence that would ultimately lead to their capture. The pair had used scissors to make cuts on his body, and the letter N was etched onto his stomach, a cruel taunt towards Norma Bell. Mary would later admit to police that she had done it to divert suspicion away from herself. The Newcastle community was in a state of panic as the police struggled to make sense of the horrifying crimes. Suspicion quickly fell on Mary and Norma due to their strange and unsettling behavior in the aftermath of the murders. Mary had even confessed to some of her school friends with a sinister sense of satisfaction that she had killed the boys. On the afternoon of August 4th, the parents of Norma Bell contacted police, stating that their daughter wished to confess what she knew of the death of Brian Howe. Police arrived at their home and asked Norma what she knew. Norma then informed them that Mary had taken her to the location of the murder, at which point she had been shown Brian's body. Mary had then demonstrated to her how she had strangled the child. According to Norma, Mary had confessed to her that she enjoyed strangling the child, before describing how she had inflicted the cut marks to his stomach with a razor blade, which had been hidden at the crime scene. Norma then led the police to the crime scene and revealed the location of the hidden razor blade. A drawing Norma made of the wounds inflicted on the boy's abdomen precisely matched those described by the coroner. On August 2, 1968, the two young girls were taken into custody for questioning. What followed was a shocking revelation. Under interrogation, Mary Bell confessed to her crimes, describing in chilling detail how she had taken the lives of Martin Brown and Brian Howe. A forensic examination of clothing owned by both girls revealed that gray fibers discovered upon Brian's body were a precise match to a woolen dress owned by Mary. The maroon fibers upon the child's shoes were a precise match to a skirt owned by Norma. Furthermore, the same gray fibers had also been found upon the body of Martin Brown. The trial of Mary Bell began on December 5, 1968, and it was a spectacle that captured the nation's attention. The testimony was revealing and damaging, with multiple children testifying to Mary's violent and unpredictable behavior. She had been known to put her hands on children's throats, strangling and choking them. Other children would then pull her away, and she would always claim that she was only playing. The defense argued that Mary was a victim of her intensely abusive upbringing and suffered from severe emotional disturbance. Psychiatrists testified about her troubled mental state. Ultimately, the jury found Mary Bell guilty of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Mary was sentenced to an indeterminate period of detention, a decision that reflected the unique nature of her case. Norma Bell, who had played a secondary role in the crimes, was acquitted of all charges and released into the care of her family. Mary Bell's life took a new trajectory within the confines of the juvenile justice system. She spent her formative years in various institutions, receiving therapy and psychiatric treatment. Over time, she began to exhibit signs of rehabilitation. Her case sparked numerous debates about the nature of childhood criminality and the capacity for rehabilitation. In 1980, after serving 12 years, Mary Bell was released from custody at the age of 23. Her identity was protected by the courts, a measure taken to help her reintegrate into society without the stigma of her past. She took on a new name and sought to build a life away from the horrors of her youth. 4 years after her release from custody, on May 25, 1984, Mary Bell gave birth to a daughter. This would prove to be her only child. Her daughter knew nothing of her mother's past until 1998, when reporters discovered Bell's then-current location in a resort town on the Sussex coast, where both had been living for approximately 18 months. This media revelation forced Bell and her 14-year-old daughter to leave their home and be driven to a safe house by undercover officers. Both mother and daughter were relocated to another undisclosed location in the United Kingdom. In 1998, Bell collaborated with author Gita Sarini to provide an account of her life before and after her crimes for the book Cries Unheard, The Story of Mary Bell. Within this book, Bell describes the abuse she suffered as a child at the hands of her prostitute mother and, she alleges, several of her mother's clients. Bell's current whereabouts are unknown and remain protected by a 2003 High Court order. According to Sarini, Bell does not claim she was wrongly convicted and freely admits the abuse she suffered as a child does not excuse her crimes. The haunting question that remains is whether Mary Bell's troubled childhood can never truly be used as an explanation or justification for the heinous crimes that she committed. What do you think? Leave a comment below. Be sure to like and share this video and subscribe to our channel. And click the notification bell so you won't miss the next episode of Mysteries, Legends, and Lies.